The Great Depression was caused by three major factors. These factors are first, an uneven distribution of wealth. This happened because the working class didn't have enough money to buy the goods that they were producing. Second, overproduction was caused by farms and factories creating too many goods. Because of this, banks had to foreclose several farms. And third, decreasing demand for goods came about because there weren't enough people who wanted to buy the goods being produced. On October 29, 1929, the stock market crashed. This was a day that would forever be known as Black Tuesday. The reason the stock market had crashed was because people had been buying stocks on the margin. This meant that people who weren't able to afford stocks would put some money down and borrow the rest from a broker. However, once the stock prices rose, people decided to sell their stocks, and there were too many people trying to sell and not enough people buying. Therefore, the stock prices collapsed. The most devastating part of the Great Depression was the suffering people went through. Social effects of the Great Depression included people being evicted from their homes and having to live on the streets. Some had resorted to sleeping in parks or sewer pipes. Others would build makeshift shacks out of scrap metals that they found. One event that happened during the Great Depression was the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl had started because of drought. This caused massive amounts of dust to go everywhere for miles and miles, causing the death of several old people and babies who couldn't handle breathing in so much dirt. Economically, the Great Depression was a hard time for all. In 1929, at the start of the Great Depression, there were 2 million unemployed, 500 bank failures, and 23,000 business failures. In a short period of 4 years, by 1933, there were 13 million unemployed, 4,000 bank failures, and 33,000 business failures. Psychologically, everyone is affected in different ways by the Great Depression. However, all in all, everyone was going through a really rough time. The majority of people lost their jobs, homes, and even families. People were becoming worried about how life had become, and they were fearful that they would no longer be able to go back to the same standard of living that they had once known and loved. The Great Depression started to have a global effect after the stock market crash in 1929. American banks had removed loans and investments from Europe as well. They put a very high tariff on imports. Once the American banks failed, this affected global markets that were tied together through loans and investments. There was a domino effect because as soon as one market crashed, others were pulled down with it. World governments responded in different ways to the Great Depression. For example, the American government instituted the New Deal, which were social and economic programs that were supposed to help pull the USA out of the Great Depression. In England, they had high tariffs and increased taxes in the hope of regulating the currency. In France, they increased the workers' pay and benefits. In socialist governments, their solution was to have cooperative recovery programs and high taxes. However, Germany was now left in an economic rut and required a way out. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president during the time of the Great Depression. During his first 100 days in office, he presented a wide variety of legislation to Congress, which brought relief to the needy and helped boost the economy. The New Deal was a program that was meant to reverse the effects of the Great Depression. These programs included the FDIC, which ensures savings accounts in banks approved by the government, and the WPA that created jobs for people to work in buildings, hospitals, and parks. Politically, FDR's actions helped him as a president. He had a solution for all of the problems that the USA was facing. His New Deal was helping out the economy because he was creating jobs for people that needed them. As well, the money that they were now getting was helping people to once again be able to sustain themselves. The Treaty of Versailles aimed to bring the countries together. This caused Germany and Japan to get angry because they believed they deserved more land. Fascism is a belief in a strong, proud, ethnic, militaristic state. With the rise of fascism, people were starting to reject tolerance and liberty for stability and order. The appeasement was supposed to stop Hitler from growing too strong, but it failed. For example, he mentioned only taking a small part of Poland, but in turn, he took all of it. Mussolini was against the Treaty of Versailles because he believed it should have given Italy more land than they had received. He had promised Italy that he would end their economic problems. Fascism was starting to spread worldwide to places such as Argentina and Spain. In Argentina, Juan and Eva Perón were the fascist leaders in the 1930s. In Spain, around 1936, General Francisco Franco was the fascist ruler. Hitler was helping out the fascists with Luftwaffe, also known as the German Air Force. Most of the fighting took place in Pacific Asia and Europe. In Asia, they used several different air tactics such as kamikazes and other fighter planes. The US decided to use an island-hopping tactic in order to move quickly and try and get closer to the main island. This helped weaken Japan along the way. Two major turning points in the European theater were the Battle of Stalingrad and D-Day. Stalingrad was significant because it was the first time the Nazis suffered a major defeat in Russia. As well, it was the first time a German field marshal had ever surrendered his army. D-Day was significant because it was the greatest seaborne invasion in history, and it led to the Battle of Normandy. In Normandy, the German army in France was destroyed. The major turning point for this Pacific theater was Pearl Harbor, where Japan attacked the US and finally got them to join the war. The largest military technological advance was the atom bomb that was dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the US to end the war. The USA tried to stay out of World War II for as long as they were possibly able. However, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, they had no choice but to fight back. The U.S. losses included 2,335 servicemen, 68 civilians, 188 planes, 18 ships, and 1,178 were wounded. As well, as soon as the USA got word of Hitler, they wanted to do everything possible to stop him. They joined alliances with Britain and declared war on Japan on December 8, 1941. This led to Germany and Italy declaring war on the U.S. on December 11, 1941. The war changed American homes drastically. All men aged 21 to 36 were required to sign up for the war. This was great for the economy because there were thousands of jobs in the War Production Board. People would produce all the goods required during times of war. The Depression was over and all the wages were increased by 135%. Women were starting to get more respect during this time because as the men were away at battle, they were required to do all of their jobs. During this time, there was no racism. There were 300,000 Mexican Americans that fought in the Bracero program, 25,000 Native Americans that were known as Navajos and Code Talkers, as well as nearly 1 million African Americans who fought and were on the workforce. After 4 years of fighting in World War II, the U.S. decided they needed to find a way to end everything. So on July 26, 1945, President Truman gave executive orders to use the atomic bombs. The U.S. picked 5 targets based on weather. The first bomb was dropped on August 6, 1945 in Hiroshima. The Japanese weren't respondents, so 4 days later the U.S. dropped a second bomb in Nagasaki. After this, Japan surrendered unconditionally and signed a peace treaty with the U.S. on September 2, 1945. Some short-term consequences included widespread devastation throughout Europe and Pacific Asia. The U.S. is now in control of Japan's military and is responsible for the protection. Also, the atom bomb had left Nagasaki and Hiroshima uninhabitable. Some long-term consequences were the Cold War, a nuclear arms race, and the alliance between the U.S. and Britain. The Holocaust was a horrific event that took the lives of millions. However, because it happened, other countries are now more willing to take every step necessary to prevent something like that from ever happening again. It is not appropriate to believe that Israel was a direct result of the Holocaust. Instead, it had more in turn to do with the Zionist movement. The United Nations was created to help keep peace and security between the nations and achieve international cooperation in solving problems. The Cold War was not actually a war at all, although it was 4 decades of tension between the US and the USSR. They wanted to see who was able to keep more power.